This is a Toyota Camry, a car so monumentally dull it makes doing tax returns seem like an extreme sport. It comes in a variety of shades including silver, light silver, and daring shade Toyota called Moonstone Beige, which is neither moon nor stone nor remotely interesting. This is a car designed by committee for people who hate cars. It's boring. It's a car so sensible, so practical, it made beige seem rebellious. Front-wheel drive, 4 doors, modest power. It was built to do exactly one thing: exist. Yet somehow it's still here. Still boring, still mocked, yet faster than it has any right to be. And that's the point. The Camry doesn't flex, it just shows up, does the job, and smokes a BMW on the way home. Practical as a paperclip, but buried deep in its DNA was a quiet monster, quietly warming up. The year was 1983. Thriller ruled the charts, Return of the Jedi ruled the galaxy, and Cabbage Patch Kids, well, they were terrifying an entire generation, and I just discovered armpit hair, and so had Toyota. Because that year they gave birth to the Camry. It had the charm of a fax machine, the thrill of a damp Weet-Bix, and the styling edge of a filing cabinet. But beneath that glorious drab exterior was a whisper of intent. It wasn't quick, but it wasn't ashamed either. While people were banging on about Peugeot 205s and Golf GTIs, quietly sitting in the corner in its moonstone beige cardigan was the Camry, with more horsepower than both of them. It just had taller gears, more weight, and the design flair of an 80s cordless Motorola. But still, it was reliable, comfy, and surprisingly peppy. So yes, the Camry was slower, but not by much. Think of it as a sheep wearing a sheep's costume, with a surprisingly good cardio game. Nobody ever modified it because nobody ever believed in it. But the ingredients, they were there, quietly humming away under the beige bonnet. By 1987, the Camry had entered its second generation. It still looked like an ironing board with headlights, but something was changing under the bonnet. Because in 1988, Australia got its first Camry V6. And what a debut! While most of us were still dreaming of a Lancer GSR or Laser TX3 Turbo, the Camry slipped in with a jacked V6 making 160 horsepower. It didn't scream, it didn't shout, it just passed you quietly and then disappeared over the horizon. For me, that moment was very real. I was 18, in my modded 75 Mazda, tearing down a long stretch with all the confidence of a teenage petrolhead. A glove box full of mixtapes, wind blowing in my not yet grey hair, feeling unstoppable when this white dot appeared in my rearview mirror, and before I could say, "There's no place like home," it was right there. This boxy, hulking, all-white ghost closer to my rear end than Lycra on a bike seat, barging by with its chrome Camry Ultima V6 badge branding my frontal cortex. And before I could process what the hell had just happened, it was gone. Compared to the turbocharged heroes of that era, and even the RX-7, the Camry wasn't winning any stoplight shootouts. But here's the thing. Apart from the Rally Boys and the VN Commodore and EA Falcon, it had more horsepower than all of them, but was dragging some serious suburban dad weight. That weight and relaxed gearing made it the tortoise in a lineup of caffeinated hares. But still, she was right there in the mix. At the time, no one took the Camry seriously. Yet it had the horsepower, it had the engineering. But what it didn't have was street cred. The 1988 Ultima V6 Camry exemplifies the sleeper car archetype. Vehicles that don't necessarily look fast but can hold their own against more overtly sporty models. Its blend of reliability, comfort, and respectable performance make it a noteworthy entry into automotive history. Sure, it was a second slower down the quarter mile than the flashy boys, but it did it while holding a baby seat in the back and a lawnmower in the boot. The Camry, you say? That's for real estate agents and dads who tuck their t-shirts into their jeans. That's what made it dangerous. Australia got its first wide-body Camry built locally at Altona with a new 3-litre V6 that was smoother than a jazz station at 2 a.m. 185 horsepower, 8.5 seconds to 100, quietly, confidently quick. It was the kind of car that passed everything except judgment. By the late 90s, the Camry had evolved again. Gone were the sharp corners of its early days, replaced by smoother curves, softer lines, and even fewer reasons for anyone to get excited. But under the bonnet, it was getting angry. Toyota Australia had now inserted the 1MZ FE engine, detuned to 194 horsepower with almost 300 newton meters of torque. 0 to 100 was a smidge over 8 seconds, and it did a flat 16 down the quarter mile. Not bad in an era where we were afraid that the millennium bug would melt microchips. The next leap in Camry design comes with a slight design bloat, better sound insulation, and a continued focus on hiding power behind polite intentions. This one's a sneaky era. Kinda overlooked, but it brought refinement, bigger body, and introduced the 2.4 litre 4-cylinder that stuck around like your mate who crashes on your couch and never leaves. It was around this time everyone else was showing off. The XR6 Turbo was doing burnouts in school zones. Mazda slipped a turbo and all-wheel drive into the sedan and called it an MPS. Subaru gave you 2 turbos and a boost gauge. And Toyota, well, they still gave you a 6 CD stacker and a warning chime if your door was open. Power didn't jump dramatically, up from 194 to 210 horsepower, but everything else did. Refinement, comfort, street cred, still optional. The Sportivo trim got locked in, and while other manufacturers were chasing turbo hype, Toyota just quietly made the Camry really, really good. This generation didn't make waves, it made reliability sexy. And in the process, it created the exact Camry image most people still have in their heads today. But, meanwhile, bubbling away just under the surface, a few mad engineers began whispering about unlocking its full potential. TRD had started poking at it, and the Lotus boys had a go. And when no one was looking, the beige began to bite. Then it happened. Beige bleached its hair and snapped. Toyota split the Camry name in two. 4-cylinder base models stayed Camry, but the V6, that became the Aurion. And it was a weapon. Now, the 4-cylinder Camry was no asthmatic, but the Aurion, that was a whole other story. Offering a 3.5 litre 200 kilowatt V6, propelling the fridge from 0 to 100 in 7 seconds on its way to a 14.9 quarter mile. And if that wasn't enough, TRD got involved, and someone in the office said, "Let's supercharge it." And nobody stopped them. The TRD Aurion was born. 241 kilowatts, 400 newton meters, front-wheel drive, chaos. Torque steer so bad it could rip your arms off and slap you with them as you hit 100 in just over 6 seconds. It was loud, silly, imperfect, and utterly brilliant. Oh, and if you needed proof the engine was legit, Lotus borrowed it. The same V6 from your uncle's beige Aurion powered the Lotus Evora, and in the right hands the motor hit over 400 horsepower. Which just goes to show the boring only stays boring if you never wake it up. This was the moment the Camry bloodline bit back. Not with a roar, but with a whine. A supercharged one. After the madness of the Aurion, the Toyota Boffins were tied back to their desks and their Red Bulls were replaced with herbal tea. The supercharger was gone, the torque steer tantrums silenced, and the Camry, well, it went back to being about as exciting as a lukewarm sausage roll from the servo. But here's the thing. It still kept that 3.5 litre V6. Still 200 kilowatts with 268 horsepower. The heart was still there, it just wasn't allowed to have fun anymore. That had been locked in a box marked TRD, never again. They also brought in a new 2.5 litre 4-pot. It wasn't exciting, but it would outlive every relationship you've ever had. The final flex. This is where Camry goes full bloody John Wick in a button-up. No blower, no hype, just 301 horsepower in a Camry. And this one, it didn't need a supercharger to do it. They tuned the V6, sharpened the handling, made it look menacing, and called it a day. In the US, they even released a full TRD spec. Quad pipes, big brakes, red stitching, stiff suspension, and over 300 horsepower unassisted. Meanwhile, Australia, we missed it. Classic. Make no mistake, this is the fastest, best handling Camry ever made. Don't be fooled by its taxicab utilitarianism. This thing looks like a Batmobile, and it goes like one too. Honourable mention, the hybrid. If you don't want to destroy the planet like a Decepticon, but still want a bit more shove, the 4-cylinder and even the hybrid ain't no slouch. 170 kilowatts, 7.2 seconds to 100. Quiet, efficient, sipping fuel like fine wine and outliving everything on the road. They won't thrill you, but they'll tuck you in at night and still be around to mow your lawns in 2056. And it moves with that same menacing grin, so you won't have to be embarrassed. To most people, it's just a Camry. And I'd agree. It still does airport runs. Yes, it still gets bought by people who think sports mode means driving to tennis a bit faster. It's beige. It's quiet. It's probably parked next to a retirement village right now. But underneath all of that, for those who know, the rewards can be ridiculous. Imagine boosting these things as TRD did, modding them or transplanting the 2GR into something stupid and lightweight like Lotus. Hell, even the 3RZ crowd figured it out. Torque for days in a motor you could rebuild with a hammer and a stubby. And with the price of performance cars going up faster than eggs, milk or a trip to Macca's, maybe the Camry is the sleeper hero nobody is talking about. The Camry finally became what it was always afraid to admit it could be. A proper, stylish, under-the-radar weapon for those who know. Maybe Camrys are the next gold rush.